Let me introduce myself, I'm Amelia, living in a sprawling house just at the city's edge. I own a pet supplies company and a big retail supermarket focused on pets. Animals? They've been my entire world since I was little. Always found myself caring for some creature or another, which led me to where I am now. It was a cool, crisp evening when James walked into one of my charity events. He was there to write a story, standing awkwardly by the side, holding his notepad like a shield. I walked over, breaking into his space with a smile and a hand stretched out. "Hey, I'm Amelia. Haven't seen you around here before. You new?" He took my hand, a bit surprised, then flashed a quick, somewhat nervous smile. "Yeah, James Mitchell. I'm covering this event for the local paper." "You're Amelia Carter, right? The one who runs all this?" "Guilty as charged," I chuckled, brushing a stray hair from my face. "Hope we're giving you something good to write about." "Oh, definitely." His eyes scanned the room, filled with volunteers and the happy chaos of an event in full swing. "This is impressive, what you've put together." "Thanks. We're all about giving back. Plus, I can't stand seeing animals in trouble. You got pets?" He shook his head. "Travel too much. Wouldn't be fair to the poor thing." We chatted more about the event, and he asked insightful questions that told me he did his homework. His genuine interest was refreshing, and as the night wore on, I found myself looking forward to his calls and texts. Fast forward 6 months, and we're standing under a simple yet elegant arch, exchanging vows. I remember thinking how wild it was that life could throw such good things my way when I least expected it. A year into the marriage, and my business was booming. The house felt even more alive with every stray I brought home. James, ever the intrepid journalist, kept bringing stories of his travels into our conversations, making our dinners lively and full of laughter. One night, I was closing up shop when a lady rushed in, just as I was about to turn the sign to "closed." She was clutching a cardboard box so tightly her knuckles were white. "Excuse me, are you Amelia?" she gasped, out of breath. "Yeah, that's me. What's up?" She thrust the box into my hands. "Found these kittens behind my house. I can't take care of them, but I heard you could help." Peeking into the box, I saw 4 tiny, mewling kittens, their eyes barely open. "I got them, don't worry. They'll be safe here." "Thank you so much." She looked relieved, almost on the verge of tears. I just didn't know what else to do. After she left, I settled the kittens into a warm blanket in the back, ensuring they were comfortable. That night, as I told James about them, he just shook his head in wonder. "You ever gonna say no?" he joked, pouring us both a glass of wine. "Not when it comes to this. You know that." After the wedding, life started spinning faster than I ever imagined. The business was booming, and James's career as a journalist was on the rise. Every piece he wrote seemed to turn to gold, and his trips became more frequent. Despite the hectic pace, the day we found out I was pregnant was the day everything else seemed to pause, just for a moment. The positive test was like a beacon, cutting through the fog of our daily grind. "James, we're going to be parents," I murmured, my heart hammering in my chest as he swept me into his arms. "Yeah, babe, we are," he whispered back, his eyes bright with something like wonder. The pregnancy wasn't easy. Morning sickness hit me hard, and running the store became a daily challenge. James was supportive, always popping in when he could, bringing me ginger tea and those little crackers that were the only thing I could stomach some days. When Lily was born, it felt like a storm had passed, leaving the world shiny and new. But complications during the delivery cast long shadows. The doctors said I couldn't have more kids, a blunt statement that hung heavy between James and me in the sterile silence of the hospital room. James's disappointment was a quiet thing, but it stretched wide and deep. He tried to hide it, but sometimes I'd catch him staring out the window with a far-off look, or he'd be unusually quiet during dinner. "James, talk to me. Please," I'd plead, reaching for his hand across the table. "I'm fine, Mel, really. Just tired, you know?" But his voice would be flat, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. When Lily turned 1, it was clear she was the light of my life. She had my eyes and James's easy smile. Teaching her to walk, to say her first words, it was a joy unlike any other. But James, he was there but not really. He'd smile and play with her, but his smiles didn't quite reach his eyes. Lately, James had started taking more business trips alone and was often late coming home from work. This shift left me with quieter evenings, which I spent nurturing Lily. She was my little ray of sunshine in the increasingly gray days of my marriage. At just 5, she was already reading children's books and even little notes I left around, which I wrote to spark her curiosity and love for learning. Our bond was my solace. As for James and me, our relationship had cooled considerably. He had taken to sleeping in another room, claiming he needed to get up early for work without disturbing me. My attempts at conversation, trying to bridge the widening gap between us, were met with curt responses or tired dismissals. It was past midnight when I was jolted awake by Lily, her small hands shaking me urgently. Her face was lit with a mix of fear and excitement as she tugged at my arm. "Mommy, come quick. There's a baby outside, I couldn't bring him in, he's too heavy," she blurted out, breathless from either the run up the stairs or the weight of her discovery. I was half in a dream, not fully grasping her words. "A baby? Lily, it's probably just your imagination. Let's get you back to bed." But she was insistent, pulling me with more strength than I thought her little hands could muster. "No, Mommy, he's real. I saw him at the front door." Reluctantly, I followed her down the stairs, my mind racing. At the door, there it was, undeniable and shocking. A baby boy, wrapped snugly but abandoned in a portable cradle right on our doorstep. This was a first for me. I'd taken in countless strays, but a child? Lily was peering into the cradle with a curious gaze. "Look, Mommy, it's a boy. He's my brother." I knelt beside the cradle, my heart sinking. "Lily, sweetheart, this isn't our baby. Someone must have left him here by mistake." But Lily was persistent, her small face serious as she said, "No, Mom, there was a note. It said he's Daddy's son, so he's my brother." Before I could respond, James appeared, his face unreadable in the dim porch light. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice tinged with a forced casualness that didn't sit right with me. Lily was quick to answer, "Daddy, it's your baby. The note said so." James let out a stiff, uneasy chuckle. "You must have dreamt that, kiddo. There was no note." Lily's brow furrowed, frustrated. "There was. But now it's gone." James's eyes met mine, something fleeting in his glance that I couldn't place. He turned to Lily, his tone firm, almost harsh. "It's late, Lily. Go to bed now. We'll sort this out." "But Daddy." "Lily, bed. Now," James interrupted, pointing sternly towards the stairs. Lily, crestfallen and muttering, trudged back upstairs. I turned to James, my voice low and urgent. "We need to call the police, James. This is serious. We can't just keep someone's child." He was quick to dismiss me, his whisper sharp. "Let's not overreact. We could take him in, couldn't we? After all, it's a boy, just what we wanted." His words stunned me, the implication chilling. "James, are you listening to yourself? This is a child, not a stray pup that wandered in. We're talking to the police." His face darkened, and he stepped closer. "No police. We're not involving them. I'm going to bed." Once James retreated to his room, I managed to calm the little one. As he slept, I carefully snipped a few locks of his hair, planning to get a DNA test done. This wasn't a decision I took lightly, but my gut told me it was necessary. The next morning, I acted like everything was normal. I watched as James left for work, his demeanor unreadable. Once he was gone, I called the police. They came and took the baby to ensure he was cared for properly. That evening, when James returned and discovered what I had done, he exploded in anger, making a huge scene. "Why would you call them? We could have handled this ourselves," he yelled, his face red with frustration. His reaction only deepened my suspicions. I kept my calm, though, not letting on how much I already suspected. It's the right thing to do, James. That child could have a family looking for him, I said, trying to reason with him. His responses were evasive, spinning more questions in my mind. I decided then to reach out to a private detective. Meanwhile, I also realized we might need money for all these expenses, lawyers, detectives, who knew what else. So, I checked our joint bank account. My heart sank when I saw it nearly empty. $30,000, saved for Lily's education, gone. I confronted James over the phone. Where's the money from our account? The $30,000? I asked, my voice firm, trying not to let the anger show. Oh, that. I had to help my brother out, he was in some serious debt, James stammered, his explanation sounding rehearsed. Right then, I knew he was lying. Not wanting to show my hand just yet, I simply replied, I see. But internally, I was seething. This confirmed my decision to hire the detective. With my personal savings, I took the baby's hair and some from James's comb to a clinic for DNA testing. The process was straightforward, but waiting for the results was agonizing. During that time, I tried to keep things normal at home, especially for Lily's sake, but the atmosphere was tense. 2 weeks later, I received the call from the clinic. The results were as I feared, the child was indeed James's son. I said nothing to James, waiting instead for the detective's report to see the full picture. A week after getting the DNA results, I met with the detective. James had an affair with a woman who then gave birth to his son. They had planned to be a family until she met someone wealthier and decided to abandon the child with James, disrupting her new plans. The detective explained everything in a low, even tone, but each word was a hammer to my heart. Once she found the other guy, your husband's son became inconvenient. That's why the baby ended up on your doorstep. With the address from the private detective in hand, I drove to the mistress's apartment, a mix of anger and disbelief churning inside me. The whole ride there, I kept thinking about the baby, about James, and about the betrayal that had unfolded so shockingly. When I arrived, I didn't even hesitate at the door. I knocked sharply, my heart pounding in my chest. The door swung open, and there he was, James, looking like he'd seen a ghost. The color drained from his face when he saw me. "What are you doing here, Amelia?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I pushed past him into the apartment, my eyes quickly finding the woman who had turned my life upside down. She was as I imagined, only now wearing a panicked look as she saw me. "I'm not here to cause a scene," I said, my voice cold and steady. "I just want to know one thing. How could you leave a baby, your baby, alone on the street like that?" The mistress, her back stiffening, responded with a shrug that made my skin crawl. "I didn't want the child. James wanted a son, so I left him with you guys to raise." Her nonchalance about the whole thing infuriated me, but before I could reply, the doorbell rang. She looked visibly shaken, moving quickly to answer it. A man entered, confusion written all over his face. "Who are these people, Julia?" he asked, his tone cautious. Julia, the mistress, forced a nervous laugh. "Oh, they're just some friends. They were just leaving." But I couldn't let this go, not now. I stepped forward, meeting the eyes of the man who clearly expected a different kind of evening. "I'm James's wife, and this is our life she's been meddling with. She left her newborn with us because she thought she could get rid of the baby that easily when she found you," I said, the words bitter as they came out. The man, now pale, turned to Julia. "Is this true?" She opened her mouth, then closed it, no lies coming to her aid this time. The man's face hardened as he looked from her to James and then back to me. "I want no part of this," he said, and without another word, he was gone, his footsteps echoing down the hall. James tried to reach for me, his hands outstretched, pleading. "Amelia, please, I can explain. There's nothing you can say that will fix this. I'm filing for divorce." I cut him off, my voice trembling not just with anger, but with a profound sadness. Julia's eyes were on James now. "Don't leave me, not now. We can be a family, with our son," she begged, desperation coloring her every word. The cynicism of her plea, the ease with which she shifted her allegiances, it was all too much. I turned to James, my decision clear. "I can't do this anymore." Without waiting for his response, I left the apartment. My next stop was the police station. I filed a formal complaint against James's mistress for abandoning her child, an act that endangered his safety. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but his face was etched with the seriousness of the situation. From there, I went directly to the custody service. I argued fervently that the mistress should be stripped of her maternal rights. The caseworker assigned to the case took notes intently as I spoke. "We'll need to conduct a thorough investigation. It will take time," she explained. "I understand, but please consider the child's safety above all," I urged, the image of the abandoned baby still vivid in my mind. Feeling like I had started a necessary process, I then turned my attention to the impending legal battle with James. I contacted a lawyer, one recommended by my best friend who had gone through her own divorce. The lawyer, Mr. Green, was a stout man with a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately made me feel I was in capable hands. "We'll need a strong strategy, especially if you're seeking financial compensation and custody," Mr. Green said during our first meeting. "I want to ensure my daughter's future is secure, and I want back every penny James took from our joint account," I declared, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. Mr. Green nodded, jotting down notes. "The total amount withdrawn was $30,000, I answered. "He used our savings, money that was meant for our daughter's education, for the needs of his mistress." "That's a substantial sum. We'll also pursue alimony, given his lack of interest in co-parenting, and compensation for adultery," Mr. Green added, already flipping through his calendar for court dates. The legal proceedings that followed were lengthy and grueling. In court, James and his mistress were defensive, their behavior erratic. The judge frequently reprimanded them for their conduct, which ranged from interruptive outbursts to outright disrespect. On one particularly tense day in court, after James had tried to explain away his actions with feeble excuses, I had my turn to speak. "Your Honor, he not only betrayed our family but also mismanaged our finances, jeopardizing our daughter's future," I stated clearly, meeting the judge's gaze. "I seek full restitution and appropriate alimony to provide for her upbringing." When the final gavel came down, it was a relief. The judge awarded me the full $139,000, citing the clear financial misconduct and James's lack of participation in parenting. He also granted me custody of Lily, with James required to pay alimony. The money, when it finally came through, was immediately set aside for Lily's education. It wasn't just a victory in court, it was a promise to my daughter that I would always fight for her, no matter what. One crisp morning, I sat down with Lily at our kitchen table, her small fingers clumsily spreading jam on her toast. She looked up at me with those big, curious eyes, her brow furrowed in thought. "Mommy, why don't we see Daddy anymore?" she asked, her voice soft and uncertain. I paused, considering how to explain the complexities of adult problems to a child whose world shouldn't have to include such worries. "Well, honey, sometimes people need a little time apart to understand how to be the best they can be," I started, trying to keep my tone light but honest. "It doesn't mean Daddy doesn't love you." Lily nodded, taking this in. "Do you still love Daddy?" The question stung a little, not out of pain for James, but for the innocence Lily still held. "I'll always care about him, because he's your dad. But sometimes love changes, and that's okay." A year after everything came crashing down, life finally seemed to find a rhythm again. Lily and I had settled into our new reality. The store was thriving, and the community around us had rallied in ways I'd never imagined, supporting both our business and our spirits. Then, one sunny afternoon, I received a call that would change the course of our lives once more. It was from the custody service. The news was heavy. My ex-husband's mistress had been stripped of her parental rights, and shockingly, James hadn't stepped in to take his son, despite all his previous claims of wanting a boy to carry on his name. The little boy was placed in an orphanage. My heart broke hearing that. No child should have to go through such abandonment. I talked to Lily about it that evening. "Lily, you remember the little boy we found on our doorstep? Your brother?" I started, unsure how to approach the topic. "Yeah, Mommy. Is he okay?" Her small face was filled with concern. I sighed, gathering my thoughts. "He's in an orphanage, sweetheart. His mom can't take care of him, and your dad, he isn't there for him either." Lily looked thoughtful for a moment, then her expression hardened with resolve. "Can he come live with us? He's my brother." Her innocence and compassion were overwhelming. "Would you like that?" I asked, although her mind seemed made up. "Yes, I want to help him. He's family, right?" Her certainty made up my mind. The next day, I contacted the custody service to inquire about the process of adopting him. The paperwork was daunting, the road filled with legal intricacies, but the thought of that little boy alone in the world propelled me forward. The months that followed were a whirlwind. I visited the orphanage regularly, each time my heart aching at the sight of so many children without families. James's son, Ben, was a quiet, watchful child. Each visit, he grew more accustomed to me. One afternoon, as I was leaving, he tugged at my hand, his small voice calling after me, "Mommy, will you come back?" His words struck a chord deep within me. "Always, Ben. I'll always come back for you." It took 6 months of visits, meetings, and countless signatures before I got the call. The adoption was approved. I was overjoyed and terrified all at once. I rushed to the orphanage to tell Ben the news. When I arrived, he was playing in the yard, his little figure dwarfed by the big toys around him. As I approached, he spotted me and ran over, his small arms lifted in anticipation. I scooped him up, spinning him around. "Guess what, Ben? You're coming home with us. You're going to be my son and Lily's brother for real," I told him, my voice thick with emotion. Bringing Ben home felt like mending a piece of my heart I hadn't realized was still broken. Lily embraced her role as big sister with a fierce tenderness that only a child could muster. Watching them together, playing, arguing, and just being siblings, filled the house with a chaotic but joyous energy. Ben started school this year, and watching him head off with his backpack almost as big as he is, it fills me with pride. He's adjusted well, and his teachers all say he's a joy to have in class. Lily, ever the protective big sister, always checks on him during their school breaks, making sure no one picks on him. Running the pet store keeps me busy. It's more than just a job, it's a passion. I've expanded our services, hosting community events, and even starting a small adoption center in the back. Watching families come in and leave with a new pet, knowing they're going to a good home, it's incredibly rewarding. As for James, I haven't seen him since the divorce was finalized. I heard through the grapevine he's moved out of state after losing his job and breaking things off with his mistress. Part of me is curious about how he's managing, but mostly, I don't want any part of that drama anymore. My focus is here, with our children, with our life. The other day, Lily and I were repainting the kitchen, a project we decided to tackle together. Ben was at a friend's house, so it was just us girls, splattering paint and sharing laughs. "Mom, do you ever miss things being the way they were before?" Lily asked, her brush pausing mid-stroke. I considered her question, paint can in hand. "Sometimes, I guess. But I love our life now. Don't you?" She dipped her brush in the paint. "Yeah. It's better now. Ben's here, and we're happy. It's just different, that's all." "Different can be good, sweetheart. We've gotten through a lot, and here we are, stronger than ever," I reassured her, giving her a playful nudge with my elbow. Later that week, I had a meeting with the local animal shelter about partnering for an upcoming adoption event. After the meeting, as I was closing up for the day, I took a moment to look around at the life I'd built. From the bustling store filled with customers and their pets, to the community notices pinned up next to the register, to the photos of Lily and Ben at their latest school event. This was my world now, and it was a good one. As the sun set, casting long shadows over the floor of the shop, I locked up and headed home, ready to spend the evening with my kids, maybe watch a movie or play a game. Life had thrown us some curveballs, but here we were, catching every one and throwing them right back.
The morning sun streamed into the kitchen as I sipped my coffee, browsing through some old photo albums. It was surprising how quickly time had passed. As I turned the pages, I remembered the moments we shared as a family. There were photos from vacations, birthdays, school events, and simple family outings. It all felt so recent, yet some of those moments were years ago. Daniel walked into the kitchen, his face fresh from his morning shave. "Morning, Clara. What are you looking at?" "Just some old photos," I replied, showing him a picture of our family from last Christmas. "Remember this?" He chuckled. "Oh, the time when Alex tried to cook the turkey? That was something." Alex, our eldest, had a passion for cooking, but was still learning. That Christmas, he'd tried to surprise us by taking on the turkey dinner, but ended up charring it a bit. We had laughed it off, saying it was the thought that counted. Liam, hearing us from the living room, shouted, "Don't remind me. I was the one who had to order the last-minute pizza." Daniel and I laughed, recalling how our traditional Christmas dinner was replaced with pizza that year. The day moved along just like any other. Daniel left for work, while I prepared the boys' lunches and got them ready for school. Alex and Liam, despite their occasional sibling spats, were thick as thieves. They were both in high school, with Alex being 2 years older than Liam. Their bond was something I cherished. They were each other's confidants, and their laughter often echoed through the house. That evening, as we sat for dinner, I brought up Daniel's upcoming 55th birthday. "We should do something special," I mused. "Like what, Mom?" Liam asked, his face lighting up at the idea. "I was thinking of a quiet family dinner," I began, but Alex interrupted. "Come on, Mom. Dad's turning 55. We should throw him a big party." Daniel, trying to hide his excitement, said, "I'd prefer something quiet, but I won't mind a party." The days leading up to Daniel's party were hectic. There was so much to do. Invitations to send out, food to arrange, decorations to put up. The boys were a tremendous help. They'd come home from school and immediately get to work, helping in any way they could. Alex took charge of the guest list, ensuring that all of Daniel's closest friends were invited. Liam, being the more artistic one, had ideas for decorations that would make the night truly memorable. One afternoon, as I was on my way to pick up the cake, I received a call from Ella. "Hey, Clara," she began, her voice sweet. "I heard about Daniel's party. Can I come?" Ella was a distant relative, a cousin's daughter, I believe. She was much younger, in her early 20s, and had often visited us during her childhood. Of late, however, she had drifted away, caught up in her own life, I guessed. "Of course, Ella," I responded. "It's been ages. We'd love to have you." "Great," she replied. "I'll see you soon." The day of the party arrived. The house was buzzing with energy. Liam and Alex were ensuring everything was perfect. Guests began to arrive, filling our home with laughter and chatter. Strangely, Daniel was late. He was never late, especially not for something this important. As the clock ticked on, I grew anxious. Calls to his phone went unanswered. And then, the front door opened. But instead of a cheerful Daniel ready to be surprised, he walked in with Ella on his arm. The room went silent. The jovial atmosphere vanished in an instant. My heart raced, and my palms felt clammy. Something was off. Daniel cleared his throat. "Everyone, I have something to say," he began, his voice unsteady. "Clara, I want a divorce. Ella is pregnant, and I'm the father." The room was so silent, I could hear the tick of the clock on the wall. My mind raced, trying to process what I'd just heard. How could this be? Everything had been perfect just a few hours ago. Alex stood up, his face red with anger. "Dad, what are you saying? This is a joke, right?" Liam, always the quieter one, just stared at the floor, tears forming in his eyes. Ella looked around the room, her face flushed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but I wasn't sure if she meant it. Daniel looked at me, waiting for a response. But words failed me. The life I thought I knew was falling apart in front of my eyes. Guests began to murmur among themselves, and slowly, they started to leave. The party was over before it even began. That night, the boys and I sat in the living room, trying to make sense of everything. Alex was fuming. "I can't believe Dad would do this to us," he muttered. Liam, his voice shaky, said, "What are we going to do now, Mom?" I took a deep breath, trying to muster strength. "We'll figure it out, boys. We always do." But deep down, I was as lost and scared as they were. Our life was unraveling, and I didn't know how to stop it. The days after the party were a blur. News of Daniel's revelations spread like wildfire. Friends and family were shocked. Some even called to express their disbelief. The phone rang incessantly, with many offering support, but I often let it go to voicemail. I needed time to think, to process everything. The boys were taking it particularly hard. Alex, especially, was vocal about his feelings. "I can't believe Dad would do this to us," he'd often say, anger evident in his voice. Liam, on the other hand, was more reserved. He spent a lot of time in his room, often lost in thought. One day, as we were having dinner, Alex announced, "I'm going to live with Dad. Liam and I both. It's a bigger house, and besides, boys should be with their father." I looked at him, surprised. "Are you sure about this, Alex? Have you talked to Liam?" Alex glanced at Liam, who nodded. "Yes, we've discussed it. We think it's for the best." Liam added, "We just think, with everything going on, we should be there for him too." I took a deep breath, fighting back tears. If that's what you both want, then okay. The decision was made. The next week, the boys packed their bags and moved in with Daniel and Ella. The house felt empty without them, but I respected their decision. It wasn't long before things started to change, though. One evening, I received a call from Alex. "Mom," he began, his voice strained. "Ella is making our lives miserable. She throws parties all the time, and her friends are always over. They're loud and obnoxious." Liam took over the phone. "Mom, it's not what we thought. Ella doesn't want us there. She's making it very clear." My heart ached hearing their words. "Boys, you can always come back home. This is your home." There was silence on the other end. Then Alex replied, "We'll think about it, Mom." Days turned into weeks, and the tension grew. The boys were unhappy, and even Daniel started to see Ella's true colors. One evening, there was another knock on my door. It was Daniel and Ella. Ella, her face red with anger, started, "Clara, you need to take your sons back. They're ruining our life." Daniel looked embarrassed but said nothing. I replied calmly, "They're your sons too, Daniel. They can decide where they want to live." Ella huffed, "This is ridiculous. We can't have them here." I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to say something, to defend our children, but he remained silent. It was clear where his loyalties lay. The boys eventually returned home, and our small apartment was filled with life again. Although it was a tight space, the warmth of our bond made it comfortable. Ella's attitude had worn them out, and they regretted ever leaving. Their return also brought to light how deeply Ella's influence was entrenched in Daniel's life. One evening, as I was scrolling through my social media, an idea began to form. I knew Ella was always chasing after the flashy lifestyle. Her posts were filled with pictures of expensive items, fancy dinners, and luxurious vacations. I wondered if I could use this to my advantage. "Boys," I called out, gathering them in the living room, "I have an idea." Alex looked curious. "What is it, Mom?" "I think it's time we take matters into our own hands. Ella's been having her fun, but it's time we expose her for who she really is." Liam raised an eyebrow. "How do you plan on doing that?" I explained my plan, detailing each step. "I'm going to create a fake profile of a rich, successful man. If Ella is as shallow as I think she is, she'll take the bait." Alex smirked. "This could actually work, but what's the end goal?" I took a deep breath. "I want to show Daniel her true colors. I want him to see that she's using him, that she's not the angel he thinks she is." Liam looked hesitant. "It's risky, Mom. What if you get caught?" I nodded. "I know, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. With the boys' help, we set up a profile, complete with pictures of a handsome, wealthy-looking man, luxurious vacations, and high-end cars. We named him Max Sterling. Within a day of creating the profile, I sent Ella a friend request, which she quickly accepted. I wasted no time and sent her a message. Max. Hey, came across your profile. You have a stunning smile. Ella responded almost instantly. Ella. Thank you, Max. Your profile looks impressive. Businessman? Max. Yes, I dabble in a bit of everything. Real estate, stocks, you name it. By the way, are you single? Ella replied with a wink emoji. Currently in a situation, but nothing too serious. Why do you ask? Max. Well, I'm looking for someone to accompany me to some events. I could use a beautiful woman by my side. Ella's response was swift and eager. Sounds tempting. Tell me more. And so, our pen pal affair began. Ella opened up about her life, and as I'd predicted, she didn't have many kind words about Daniel. She talked about how she was just in it for the money and the luxurious life. She even mentioned faking her pregnancy to tie him down. But the worst came when she referred to me as her silly aunt and laughed about how easily she had played everyone. I had all the evidence I needed. One evening, the doorbell rang. It was Daniel. He looked worn out. Clara, can we talk? He asked, his voice breaking. I let him in. We sat in silence for a while. Finally, he spoke. I think I made a mistake. Ella is different. I smirked. Oh, you have no idea. We gathered in the living room of the house I once called home. The heavy drapes held back the evening sun, casting the room in a subdued light, matching the somber mood. Daniel looked apprehensive, constantly glancing at the front door. The boys sat rigidly, their faces reflecting a mix of anger and anticipation. Ella entered, her confident demeanor suggesting she was expecting a very different gathering. What's all this? She questioned, her eyes narrowing as she scanned the room, landing on me. Before anyone could reply, Daniel, with a newfound courage, handed her the tablet. You should see this. She frowned, scrolling through the conversation. Her confident stance faltered, replaced with growing panic. She looked up, her gaze darting between Daniel and me, realizing she had been caught. Is this your doing? She spat, directing her anger at me. Ignoring her accusation, I asked calmly, Is it true, Ella? Were you just using Daniel for his money? And the pregnancy? She laughed, though there was no humor in it. Why should it matter? He was an easy target. Alex, unable to contain his anger, shot up. You played with our lives for your own selfish reasons. Ella smirked. Should have kept your noses out of my business then. Liam, ever the mediator, tried reasoning. You could have just been honest from the start. Why play this game? She looked defiant. Because it was easy, and I got what I wanted. He was just a stepping stone. Daniel, his voice shaking, finally spoke. Did you ever care about me? Even a little? She shrugged nonchalantly. You served a purpose. That's all. With those final cold words, she stormed out, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. There was a heavy silence. Daniel looked utterly broken, his world shattered. I sighed. I'm sorry, Daniel, but you had to know. He nodded, tears streaming down his face. I was so blind. Alex looked at his father, his voice firm. You made your choice, Dad. You decided to trust her over us. Liam added, echoing his brother's sentiments. Actions have consequences. Daniel sat there, crushed by the weight of Ella's betrayal and his own decisions. And while it was painful to watch, neither I nor my children felt any sympathy for him. I found myself back at the house just a few days after the revelation. This time, it was to discuss the terms of our divorce. It felt surreal. The house, which once echoed with our shared dreams, now stood as a testament to our broken trust. The boys were adamant they wanted to be present, to ensure things were fair. They had grown so much during this time, standing firm and supporting me. Daniel looked even more worn out, as if the weight of his mistakes was physically pushing him down. He started, Clara, I can't begin to express how deeply sorry I am. Save it, I cut him off. This isn't about apologies. Let's get to business. Liam took out a piece of paper. We've listed out what we think is a fair division. We don't want more than we deserve, but we certainly won't accept less. Daniel skimmed through it, then looked up, hesitating. Clara, the house. I thought we could sell it and split the money. Alex snorted. Why? So you can give half to Ella? I intervened. No, the house stays with the boys and me. You have other properties. You won't be left homeless. Daniel tried again. It's just that the house holds memories for me too. Memories you were willing to tarnish by bringing Ella into our home, I retorted. He looked down, defeated. Fine, I won't contest it. The conversation moved on to other assets, bank accounts, and investments. It was a grueling process, bringing up more raw emotions. Every time we hit a roadblock, one of the boys would step in, reminding Daniel of his responsibilities. Finally, after what felt like hours, we reached an agreement. The boys and I would retain the family home and most of the joint savings. Daniel would keep his personal assets and the vacation home. As we were about to leave, Daniel spoke. Clara, I know I don't have any right to ask, but can we ever find a way to move past this? Not as a couple, but maybe, someday, as friends? I took a deep breath. Daniel, right now, I don't have an answer. All I know is that trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Liam added, and actions have consequences, Dad. You chose to betray us. Alex, ever the protective one, chimed in. You need to live with the choices you made. Daniel nodded, tears glistening in his eyes. I understand. Our move to the apartment was surprisingly smooth. With the boys' help, we set up our new home. While it lacked the sprawling grandeur of the house, it had a warmth that the mansion lost a long time ago. It wasn't long before I started hearing rumors. Word spread fast in our close-knit community. Ella was the talk of the town, with her web of lies coming undone one thread at a time. One afternoon, as I sipped my coffee in a cafe downtown, Mrs. Jenkins, a longtime neighbor, approached. Clara, dear, she began, her voice oozing false concern. Have you heard? That young girl, Ella, apparently, she's been seeing multiple men behind Daniel's back. I took a sip, not letting her words rile me. Not surprised, I replied, matter-of-factly. Mrs. Jenkins leaned in closer, as if sharing a state secret. And it's not just that. They say she never was pregnant to start with. I raised an eyebrow. Well, that's something. But honestly, Mrs. Jenkins, it's no longer my concern. She looked taken aback. Oh, but dear, it's such a scandal. I met her gaze, unwavering. A scandal I have no part in. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have matters to attend to. As the days went by, more revelations surfaced. Ella's escapades became the stuff of legend. The latest was about her being involved in some shady business deals. One evening, as we were having dinner, Alex shared, Dad's business is suffering. People don't want to associate with him anymore because of Ella. Liam added, I heard some partners pulled out of deals. I took a moment, then said, It's unfortunate, but he chose to align with her. This is the outcome of his choices. The doorbell rang, disrupting our conversation. To our surprise, it was Daniel. Clara, he began, I need to talk. I nodded. Fine, but keep it brief. He sighed, looking more disheveled than ever. It's all falling apart. The business, my reputation, everything. Alex scoffed. What did you expect? Daniel looked pained. I know I messed up, but I didn't expect it to go this bad. I crossed my arms. You let a snake into your life, Daniel. It was bound to bite. He looked defeated. I know. I just hoped. Liam interrupted. Hoped what? That your betrayal wouldn't have consequences? Daniel lowered his head. I'm sorry. Alex, never one to mince words, said, Sorry doesn't cut it. You made your bed. I added, Daniel, it's time you face the music. Clean up the mess you made. He nodded, turning to leave. Thank you for hearing me out. The days turned into weeks, and then months. The boys adjusted to their new school and made new friends. We no longer heard or talked about Daniel's misfortunes. Our focus was on the future, not the past. One morning, as I prepared breakfast, Liam walked in with a letter in hand. It's from the court, he announced. his face giving nothing away. I opened it and skimmed through. The final verdict of the property division was in. The judge ruled in our favor. Most of the assets were awarded to us. Alex peeked over my shoulder. Wow, that's a lot more than I expected. I nodded. Yes, but remember, material possessions are fleeting. Our real wealth is here, I said, tapping my heart. With family. Liam smiled. Couldn't agree more, Mom. The doorbell rang, and Alex went to answer. It was Mr. Wilson, our former gardener from the mansion. He looked different, happier. Clara, good to see you. I brought you these. He handed over a basket of fresh flowers. From your favorite part of the old garden. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you, Wilson. This means a lot. He grinned. I heard about the verdict. I'm glad justice prevailed. I nodded. Thank you for sticking by us, even after everything. He waved it off. You were always kind to me. Besides, everyone knew what Ella was about. It was only a matter of time. We chatted a bit more, reminiscing about the old days before he left. The boys and I sat down for breakfast, the aroma of fresh flowers filling the room. Alex broke the silence. Mom, have you thought about what we'll do now? Liam added, with the assets and all? I took a moment. I've been thinking. Perhaps it's time for a fresh start, somewhere new. We can sell the house, the cars, everything. We'll have enough to start over. Alex looked intrigued. Where were you thinking? Somewhere by the coast. Always loved the sound of waves. Liam beamed. I'm in. Alex chuckled. Yeah, me too. We started planning our move. A new place, away from the shadows of our past. It was exhilarating. A few weeks later, we packed our bags and headed to our new home. A quaint house overlooking the sea, where mornings started with sunrises and nights ended with the soothing sounds of waves. One evening, as the sun painted the horizon in hues of gold, Liam joined me. You know, Mom, this is the best decision we ever made. I smiled, looking out at the vast expanse. Yes, sometimes endings are just new beginnings in disguise. Liam wrapped his arm around my shoulders. Here's to our new beginning. I sighed contentedly. Here's to us. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, we looked ahead, our hearts full of hope, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead.
My life took a weird turn the day Mrs. Baker walked into our store, right when I was stacking some plates. I grew up here, you know? Since I was a kid, I've been helping my parents at our family tableware shop, learning the ropes of running a small business. It was cozy, filled with the clink of porcelain and the warm smiles of regulars. But that day, something was different. Emma, my dad called out from behind the counter, waving me over. Mrs. Baker, the owner of the bakery next door, was with him, a stern look on her face that didn't match her usual cheery public persona. I wiped my hands on my apron and approached them. What's up, Dad? Mrs. Baker here has a proposal, Dad said, shooting a glance that seemed a mix of confusion and curiosity. She didn't waste any time. Emma, I've been talking to your father about a potential partnership between our two businesses. I raised an eyebrow, crossing my arms. A partnership? Like, what, turning the bakery and the shop into some sort of megastore? Exactly, she nodded sharply. And there's more. I think it would be a good idea if you and my son, Michael, got to know each other better. I choked on my own breath. Wait, what? Michael? Why? It's simple, she snapped, her voice firm, almost commanding. Michael and you getting together would make this business merger smooth. It makes sense, Emma. Think about the potential. I looked over at Dad, who seemed just as stunned but intrigued. You're talking about a marriage merger? Like in the movies? Yeah, Mrs. Baker continued. It's all for the business, sweetheart. You two could be a power couple, the face of a new joint venture. It's practical. Dad nudged me gently. Emma, just meet him. No harm in that, right? I sighed, looking from my dad's hopeful face to Mrs. Baker's stern one. Fine. I'll meet him. But I'm not promising anything more than that. Good, Mrs. Baker smiled, her expression softening just a bit. He's coming by tomorrow. You'll see, it might work out. The next day, true to her word, Michael came into the shop. He was taller than I expected, with a kind smile and a way of moving that was confident but not overbearing. We talked over coffee, surrounded by the clinks of our store, and I had to admit, he was nothing like his mother, polite, funny, and surprisingly down to earth. So, your mom tells me we're supposed to save the family businesses by getting hitched. I joked, trying to keep the mood light. He laughed, a genuine, hearty sound. Yeah, she has a way of putting things, doesn't she? Look, I know this is weird, but I think we could make a good team, in business at least. I found myself nodding, more taken with him than I wanted to admit. Maybe. If the business side of things works out. As he left, I couldn't shake the feeling that this crazy idea might just work, or at the very least, it wouldn't be boring. Marrying Michael had felt like stepping into a whirlwind. Before I knew it, our businesses were smashed together into one big store. It sounded good on paper, but living it was another story. Mrs. Baker had her fingers in every pie, literally and figuratively. It wasn't long before she started calling the shots at the store, her store now, I guess. One Monday morning, I was setting up the display when Mrs. Baker stomped in, her heels clicking loudly against the tile floor. Emma, those plates go in the back. The front is for the pastries now. She barked, not even a good morning. I bit back my irritation. Sure, Mrs. Baker. I'll move them. And call me Janice, we're family now, she said, but it sounded less like a warm invitation and more like a command. I shuffled the plates to the back, muttering under my breath. The change was more than just physical space, it was in everything. I wasn't just selling tableware now. I was up to my elbows in flour and sugar, helping with the pastries when the baker called in sick, which seemed to happen more than it should. One afternoon, while I was wiping down tables, Michael came over, a rare sight since he mostly handled the bakery's supply side. How's it going, Em? He asked, leaning on a clean table. I shrugged, keeping it cool. Just peachy. I never imagined I'd know so much about pastries. He chuckled, scratching his neck. Yeah, Mom can be a bit much. But she knows the business, you know? I nodded, though I didn't completely agree. Sure, she knows her stuff. But I feel more like I'm just another one of her employees, not a partner. Michael frowned slightly. It's just the way she does things, Em. Give it time, she'll ease up. I doubted that, but changed the subject. We talked a bit more about some minor tweaks to the menu before he was called away. Things didn't ease up. If anything, they got tighter. I found myself staying later, cleaning up after closing, something I never had to worry about before. One evening, I was finishing up, and Mrs. Baker was counting the day's earnings, her lips a thin line. You missed a spot on the counter, Emma. And make sure those trays are spotless, she ordered without looking up from her papers. I cleaned the spot she mentioned, my hands moving automatically. Janice, I was thinking, maybe we could try some new designs for the tableware, to match the pastries? She barely glanced at me. No need. The current ones sell fine. Focus on what's selling, Emma. That's the bottom line. Her words stung a bit. I was used to having ideas, being part of decisions. Now, it felt like I was just here to follow orders. I missed the old days, the old store, my old life. Moving in with my husband's parents wasn't my idea of a perfect setup, but Janice insisted it made sense. Why waste money on rent when you can live here and help out more at the store? She had said. Her house was just a short walk from our joint business, making it all too easy for me to spend most of my waking hours there. At first, things seemed okay. The bakery and store were booming, and revenue was up. I was busy, sure, but it felt like we were all pulling together for a common cause. That was until I realized the price I was paying. I had to drop out of college. You won't need a degree to sell plates and pastries, Janice told me, dismissing my dreams as if they were crumbs on the table. One chilly morning, as I was arranging a new batch of ceramic teapots that had just arrived, Janice marched in, her eyes scanning the store like a general assessing their troops. "Emma, why are these teapots here? I told you, the new pastry display goes in this section," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through the morning calm. I sighed, pushing down the irritation bubbling inside me. "Sorry, Janice. I thought they'd catch more eyes here. I'll move them." She watched me, her arms crossed. "Look, Emma, I appreciate your ideas, but we need to focus on what sells. Pastries are selling, not these fancy teapots." I moved the teapots to the back, feeling a sting of frustration. It was becoming clear that my role here was more about following orders than bringing any of my own ideas to the table. Later that day, Dad came by the store. It was becoming a rare occurrence. He looked around quietly, a somber look on his face. We found a quiet corner, and I asked him straight up, "Dad, why don't you come by much anymore?" He sighed, looking tired. "Emma, things have changed. Janice has, well, she's taken over completely. I'm just in the way here." I frowned, confused and a bit angry. "But it's our store too. Can't you talk to her?" Dad shook his head. "It's not that simple. The contract we signed. I didn't look at it close enough. It's all tilted in her favor. I'm basically out of the loop." I clenched my fists, feeling betrayed. "That's not fair, Dad. We should do something about it." He patted my shoulder, trying to smile. "It's business, Emma. I guess I just got outplayed. Just try to get along, okay?" I nodded, though resentment simmered inside me. After Dad left, I went back to work, my thoughts chaotic with anger and helplessness. A few days later, Janice caught me rearranging some of the displays to make room for new stock. "Emma, what are you doing? I didn't approve this change," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. I stood my ground this time. "Janice, we need to make room for new stock. These items aren't selling. We can't just push pastries, people come here for variety." She stepped closer, her voice low and harsh. "Listen here, I know what I'm doing. This isn't some little game, Emma. It's a business. My business now. You do well to remember that." Her words hit hard, and I was left speechless as she walked away, leaving me to stew in my frustration. When the pandemic hit, it threw everyone into chaos, our store included. Sales nosedived as lockdowns kept our regulars tucked away at home. I remember standing in the middle of the eerily quiet store, feeling the weight of impending doom. It was clear we had to pivot, and fast, or we'd be another casualty of the crisis. One morning, I approached Janice, who was busy flipping through inventory lists that looked more depressing by the day. "Janice, we should take the store online," I suggested, trying to sound as confident as possible. "We can set up a delivery system. It might help us keep going until all this blows over." She looked up, skeptical. "Online, huh? And who's going to set that up? You?" "Yes, me. I've been reading about it. It's not that hard, and I think it's worth a shot," I responded, feeling my resolve harden. With a heavy sigh, Janice finally conceded. "Fine. Do what you can. But this better work, Emma." I threw myself into the project, learning everything from website design to logistics. Surprisingly, or maybe not, the online shift was a hit. Orders started rolling in, and it wasn't long before we were busier than we had been in months. I managed everything, from updating the website daily to coordinating with couriers, and it felt good to be proactive, to steer the ship through stormy waters. As the pandemic waned and life slowly edged back to normal, I had a new idea. "Janice, why don't we keep focusing on online sales and individual orders? It could be a new direction for us," I proposed one evening as we were tallying up the day's sales, which had shown a promising upturn thanks to the online orders. Janice didn't even look up from the books. "No, Emma. We're going back to how things were. That's enough of this online nonsense." It was a temporary fix, not a new business model. Michael was there too, nodding along to his mother's words. Mom's right, Em. People will want to come back in person. Let's not fix what isn't broken. I bit my tongue, holding back a retort. It was frustrating. We had a golden opportunity to evolve, but they were too set in their ways to see it. A few weeks later, as we officially halted the online operations and focused on in-store traffic, I overheard Janice talking to a group of her friends in the store, laughing and boasting. Yes, it was quite a challenge, but I managed to keep the business afloat during the pandemic. We had to adapt, of course. I paused behind a shelf, my hands clenched into fists. The nerve of her, taking credit for my sleepless nights, my ideas, my hard work. It stung, but I swallowed my anger. Arguing wouldn't change her attitude, and it wasn't worth the drama. It was a gloomy Tuesday, rain pelting down so hard it drummed against the store windows like 1,000 tiny drums. Most folks were smart enough to stay indoors, but the shop was open, just in case. I was tidying up some displays near the entrance, lost in thought, when the bell over the door jingled sharply. A small girl, no older than 8, stood dripping in the doorway. Her coat was soaked through, hair plastered to her head, eyes wide and scared. I dropped the cloth I was holding and rushed over. "Hey there, sweetie, come on in. You're soaking wet," I said, guiding her gently inside. She shivered, clutching a small backpack to her chest. I got lost. I can't find my mom." "Don't worry, we'll find her, okay? Let's get you warmed up first," I reassured her, fetching a towel from the back to dry her off. As I was rubbing her hair dry, Janice stormed over, frowning deeply. "What's this, Emma? Why is this child here? She's dripping all over the floor." I frowned back, protective over the little girl. "She's lost, Janice. She needs help." Janice scoffed, waving dismissively at the girl. "She's probably just a beggar. We don't need this kind of trouble. Get her out of here before she scares away any customers." I stood up, feeling my temper rise. "She's a child, Janice. It's pouring outside. We can't just throw her out. Do I have to remind you that this is a business, not a charity?" Janice snapped, glaring at both of us. Before I could argue further, Michael walked in, catching the tail end of our conversation. "What's going on here?" His mom explained with an impatient gesture towards the girl. "Emma wants to turn the store into a homeless shelter. I say she goes out the same way she came in." Michael looked at the girl, then at me, and sighed. "Emma, Mom's right. We can't start taking in strays. It's bad for business." As the argument heated up, I made a decision. I couldn't leave her out there alone. Ignoring Janice's protests, I picked up the phone and dialed the local police station. The police arrived quickly, given the weather and the circumstance. One of the officers wrapped the girl in a warm blanket I had brought from the back. They thanked me for keeping her safe and took down some information. Before she left, the girl hugged me tightly. "Thank you," she whispered. Watching her leave with the officers, hopefully to be reunited with her family soon, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Janice walked over, her expression hard. "I'll be docking your pay for the day, Emma. And you can clean up this mess yourself," she said coldly. I was too tired to argue. The rest of the day passed in a blur of scrubbing and silent treatment from Janice and Michael. Their attitude stung, but holding that scared, grateful girl in my arms, I knew I'd done the right thing, no matter what they thought. It was a regular Thursday morning at the store, just a week after the rainy day incident with the lost little girl. I was rearranging some of the newer pastries when the bell above the door chimed. I looked up, expecting another customer, but instead, I saw a well-dressed man I'd never seen before. He walked straight to me, his expression serious yet friendly. "Good morning," he greeted. "Are you Emma?" "That's me," I replied, a bit puzzled. "Can I help you with something?" "Yes, actually. I'm Thomas. I don't know if you remember, but you helped my daughter last week when she was lost. She hasn't stopped talking about how kind you were." I blinked in surprise, remembering the little girl's tight hug. Oh, yes, of course. I'm just glad she's safe now. How is she? She's great, thanks to you, he smiled. I actually came here to thank you personally and also to offer my help, if you ever need it. I was taken aback. That's very kind of you, but I don't know what you could help with. Thomas handed me his card. I'm a lawyer. I specialize in business and contract law. After what my daughter told me about how you treated her, I thought maybe if you ever need legal advice or anything, I could be of service. I stared at the card, then at Thomas. A lawyer could be useful, especially now. Actually, there might be something. But it's a bit complicated. Thomas nodded, gesturing toward a quieter corner of the shop. I'm all ears. We sat down at one of the tables, and I briefly explained the situation with Janice and the store, how things had changed after the merger, my reduced role, and my father's situation. Thomas listened intently, occasionally nodding. It sounds like you've been put in a tough spot. If you can get me the merger documents, I can take a look, see if there's anything that can be done legally to renegotiate your position or at least get you some more control. I fetched the documents from my file at home and brought them to Thomas the next day. He promised to look over them and get back to me as soon as possible. True to his word, a few days later, he called me into his office to discuss his findings. Emma, I've gone through everything, Thomas began as soon as I sat down in his office. There are a few areas where the agreement seems heavily biased against your father. It looks like there were some oversight and possibly misleading information when he signed. My heart pounded with a mix of anger and relief. So, what can we do? Thomas leaned forward, his eyes sharp. We can challenge the agreement based on these discrepancies. It's not a guaranteed win, but it's a start. You have a right to fight this, Emma. I nodded, feeling the weight of the decision. Let's do it. It's time I took a stand. After meeting with Thomas, my mind was a whirlwind of doubt and guilt. Was I doing the right thing by challenging my husband and his family? The thought of ruining their lives weighed heavily on me as I headed home. But as soon as I stepped through the door, the scene that greeted me swept all my doubts away. The house was bustling with noise and guests. It was our wedding anniversary, an event I had completely forgotten about in the midst of all the chaos. As I hesitated at the entrance, trying to process the celebration, Janice spotted me. Her face flushed from drink, she stormed over, her voice loud and slurring. There you are, wandering the streets when you should be here serving your guests, she shouted. I tried to apologize. Janice, I'm sorry, But before I could finish, she hurled an empty plate in my direction. It smashed against the wall right next to my head, shards scattering across the floor. The room fell silent, all eyes on us. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and rising anger. Then Michael staggered over, wine glass in hand. He sloshed the contents onto my hands and blouse. Clean yourself up, you're a mess, he slurred, chuckling. Janice joined in the laughter, and a few of the guests murmured uncomfortably, not sure how to react. That was the last straw. I felt something inside me snap, the last thread of tolerance for this life I was living. I straightened up, wiping my hands on my skirt, my voice steady and loud. Enough, I declared, silencing the room. I've been to a lawyer, and I'm filing for a divorce. The shock was palpable. Michael and Janice froze, their smiles fading. Who do you think you are? Janice hissed, stepping closer. I am someone who no longer accepts being treated this way, I continued, my voice clear and confident despite the trembling in my knees. I am protesting the merger agreement. There has been fraud, and I've already sent the documents to the authorities and the court. I could see the fear flicker in Janice's eyes, her tipsy bravado slipping. You can't do this to us, she stammered. I also intend to seek financial compensation for all the abuse, I added, not letting her interrupt. I turned, heading upstairs to pack my things. Behind me, I could hear Janice scrambling after me, her tone suddenly changing to one of desperation. Emma, please, let's talk about this. We can sort something out. I stopped at the top of the stairs, facing her one last time. Pulling out Thomas's business card, I held it out. You can discuss it with my lawyer. From now on, that's how we communicate. Packing my bag was quick. I didn't have much I wanted to take from that house. With every piece of clothing, every personal item, I felt a bit more free. After what felt like an eternity of legal battles and emotional upheaval, the final court hearing was more than just a procedural event. It was the day I reclaimed my life and my family's business. Standing beside Thomas, my lawyer, I watched with a steely resolve as the judge delivered the verdict that would set everything right. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, the judge announced, his voice echoing in the silent courtroom. It is clear from the evidence presented that the defendant engaged in fraudulent activities to secure control of the business. Therefore, the original merger agreement is hereby nullified, and full ownership rights will revert to the plaintiff and her father. Janice, my former mother-in-law, sat stiffly, her face unreadable. Beside her, Michael looked down, unable to meet my gaze. The court also imposed a hefty fine on Janice and ordered her to pay financial compensation, which conveniently matched the value of her shares in our business. It was more than justice, it was poetic. The business that my father and I had built with love and hard work was ours again, and Janice was out, forced to find employment elsewhere due to the financial ruin that her greed had brought upon her. Back at the store, Dad and I wasted no time in making changes. Replacing the generic fittings with our cozy decor, we brought back the community vibe that had defined our place in the neighborhood. As I reintegrated into the day-to-day operations, I also decided to pick up where I had left off with my education. Going back to college felt right. I knew now more than ever how important knowledge and education were, especially if I wanted to take our business to new heights. Life without Michael was strangely liberating. After the divorce, he had pleaded for forgiveness, hoping to salvage our marriage, but too much had happened, and my decision was firm. One day, a familiar face popped into the shop. The girl I had helped during the rainstorm came in, holding her mother's hand. She ran up to me as soon as she saw me, a bright smile on her face. "Miss Emma," she exclaimed, her voice echoing around the shop. "Hey there." I crouched down to her level. "How are you?" "I'm good. Mommy says we can get a big cake from here for my birthday." "Absolutely," I laughed, glancing up at her mother, who smiled warmly at me. "We'll make sure it's the best cake you've ever had." As they wandered off to pick out some pastries, I straightened up, watching them go. This was why I fought so hard. Not just for me or for my dad, but for these moments of joy and community.
Are you seriously thinking that I genuinely like you? Huh? I was not loved by Mike. I felt dizzy as this harsh reality hit me. Mike, seeing my condition, added insult to injury with his harsh words. All I wanted was a wife to do household chores because I'm busy at work every day. And yet you had to go and get hospitalized with your weak heart. A middle-aged woman with a frail body. What a joke to think about staying married. Huh. I felt the world around me darken, but then I remembered something I had seen earlier. With that, I have nothing to fear. With this thought, I regained my composure and retorted to Mike, "Fine by me. I have a powerful ally on my side. So, letting go of someone like Mike is not a loss for me." However, I decided to take revenge on Mike, who used me mercilessly and even rekindled his relationship with his ex-girlfriend while I was hospitalized. I'm Kate, a 45-year-old housewife, married not long ago. Until my mid-40s, my life was simple, just shuttling between home and work. My only pleasures were occasional drinks and shopping, and buying a lottery ticket as a yearly ritual, hoping for happiness someday. That's when I stumbled upon a dating app for people in their 40s. I'd attended matchmaking parties before, but never found the right one. So, I started this app with a light heart, never dreaming it would lead me to my current husband. He was 3 years older than me, named Mike. A department head in a large corporation with over 1,000 employees, earning an impressive $100,000 a year. He seemed serious, a hard worker. Curious why such a great guy was still single, I casually asked him on our first date. He shyly smiled and replied, "I've been too busy with work to have much of a chance to meet someone." Being the department head must indeed be busy. But at this age, feeling lonely, Mike decided to try the dating app. His shy response seemed so bright and attractive to me. I might have started falling for Mike from that moment. He seemed to like me too, saying, "Honestly, I never thought I'd find real connections through an app, but I'm glad I met a woman like Kate." No, it's me who's thankful. I almost gave up on meeting anyone at my age. I never imagined finding someone as wonderful as you through this app. We both felt our meeting was a miracle and smiled at each other. It didn't take long for us to consider marriage. Half a year after meeting, we got married. On the eve of our marriage registration. Is this the last time? I bought a lottery ticket, thinking it might be my last as a single woman. Right after our wedding, Mike made a request. "I'm busy with work, so sharing household chores isn't really an option. I'd like you, Kate, to quit your job and stay home." Well, my mom was a housewife too, so focusing on household chores isn't a problem for me. I agreed to his request and quit my job upon marriage. Then came the joyful days of married life. Mike happily eating my homemade meals, saying they're delicious. Those days of lonely meals felt like a lie. But little did I know that happiness would be so fleeting. Within a month of marriage, Mike's attitude changed dramatically. Initially, he'd come straight home after late work, but lately, he often returns past midnight. Even when I wait with dinner ready, "I already ate, don't need it," he says. I wish he told me sooner. I'd silently clean up the prepared meal, feeling hurt. On the rare occasions he ate at home, he complained about the dishes. "Tired from work and you serve me grilled salmon? My least favorite. How can I eat this? Make a meat dish." But there's no meat today. I'll make a meat dish tomorrow. Please bear with it today. "If there's none, go buy some. I want meat. Make it now." Despite the late hour, I had to rush to the nearly closing supermarket to buy meat. Mike's arrogance wasn't just about meals. No matter how carefully I cleaned, he always complained. Tall Mike would run his finger along high places like the top of a large bookshelf. "You still left dust here," he would bellow. He pointed out spots I couldn't reach without a stool, as if to harass me for being short. I can't reach such high places often. I'll do it on weekends, so please don't point it out every day. Even when I said that, Mike would retort with a look of disdain. "Leaving high places dusty until the weekend, huh? Sure, people really are useless." His belittling of my height hurt me, but I couldn't talk back, not knowing what he'd say next. So I had to endure silently, no matter what he said. Taking advantage of this, Mike complained about every household chore I did. He would just lie around, always claiming to be tired. I had thought him kind at first, but his true nature was gradually showing. Still, I told myself that this was what marriage was, especially having married at this age. Lately, though, I've been feeling strange palpitations and pain around my chest. What's happening to me? Well, it should pass soon. I worried about the discomfort in my chest, but neglected it for a while. Perhaps that was a mistake. My condition worsened, with severe breathlessness and dizziness. Unable to bear it, I decided to seek medical help. The symptoms turned out to be from a stress-induced heart condition. The constant mental stress was severely damaging my health. I had to be hospitalized. Preparing for hospitalization, I returned home to inform Mike, but instead of concern, he frowned and said, "What? A long hospitalization? What about the house? Who's going to do the chores?" "I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Please manage with takeout or deli food. Laundry can be done with the dryer. I don't think it'll get too dirty with just you." "Hey, are you saying I have to do all the chores? That's impossible. I'm too busy." "I'm sorry. It's just until I'm discharged." I pleaded desperately, but Mike remained sullen. Great. A half-wit who can only do chores now needs hospitalization? Really useless. Remember this when you get back. Mike hurled insults at me as I began to prepare for hospitalization alone. I felt guilty, as if I was running away from the situation, though I knew it wasn't my fault. The next morning, still sullen, Mike went to work without seeing me off. Alone, I headed to the hospital with my belongings. Mike never visited me in the hospital. I had brought everything, suspecting he wouldn't come. The hospital room felt incredibly lonely. To distract myself, I surfed the internet on my mobile. That's when I received an odd message. It was from Mike, but the content left me stunned. "Betty, I love you. I'll be off work soon, wait for me." I was about to mark it as read when it suddenly showed, "Message deleted." Who is Betty? It was a gentle message, unlike any he'd sent me. Could Mike be having an affair? As the anxiety crossed my mind, my chest began to hurt sharply. I hastily pressed the nurse call button. Fortunately, it was a mild attack, and the pain subsided in about 5 minutes following the nurse's instructions. The nurse advised, "Stress is bad for you. Think of something pleasant." But I had no idea what to think about. Then I remembered the lottery ticket I bought before getting married. The draw was yesterday. I checked the official website on my mobile for a bit of relief. I was shocked to see, "Congratulations on your win," on the page. No way, really? I was counting the amount, excited, when the door opened, and Mike walked in. Behind him was an unfamiliar woman, maybe in her early 30s, flashy in appearance. "Hey, how are you?" Mike spoke to me casually. "How can I be fine? I'm hospitalized. Plus, you haven't shown your face here even once." "Of course. Who do you think has been busy because of you? I had a hard time with work and chores." Mike, as usual, only cared about his own troubles, indifferent to my condition. I replied with a puzzled expression. "Oh, I see. Sorry for the trouble." Unfazed by my displeasure, Mike smirked and replied, "Really? Kate, you're so charmless. Well, it's okay. From now on, I don't have to worry about being inconvenienced. You can stay in the hospital as long as you like." What do you mean?" Mike's words filled me with unease again. Then, Mike, with an arrogant look, put his arm around the shoulder of the woman behind him and said, "Because she'll be taking care of me now. Right, Betty?" Betty was the name in the earlier message. She smiled while snuggling up to Mike. "Who is she? That woman?" "You're surprised, huh? Since you're useless, I contacted Betty, my ex-girlfriend. She still likes me, so she came right away." Mike boasted about it. I tried to stay calm and asked, "Oh, an old acquaintance came to help? Sorry for the inconvenience. I need to stay in the hospital a bit longer." Mike and Betty burst into laughter at my words. Is this woman a bit crazy? She doesn't understand anything. Well, can't be helped. She hadn't had a man until her mid-40s. Mike and Betty looked at me with mocking eyes. I understood very well what was happening. They were having an affair. I wanted to say that, but it would only strain my heart more. So I responded calmly, but Mike said something outrageous. "Anyway, I don't need a weak middle-aged woman anymore. From now on, I'll be with Betty." He said this while presenting me with divorce papers. He wanted to divorce me. I couldn't hide my shock, even though I tried to stay calm. "Why? You're with your ex-girlfriend whom you once broke up with. You married me, and now you want to get back together?" I asked Mike that, and he replied with a look of disgust. "Do you seriously think I genuinely liked you?" Huh? I was never loved by Mike. I felt dizzy as this harsh reality hit me. Mike, seeing my condition, added insult to injury. "That's why. All I wanted was a wife to do household chores because I'm busy at work every day. And yet, you had to go and get hospitalized with your weak heart. A middle-aged woman with a frail body. What a joke to think about staying married. Huh, The world around me grew even darker. But then I remembered something I had seen earlier. With that, I have nothing to fear. With this thought, I regained my composure and retorted to Mike, "Fine by me." Mike was surprised by my unexpected reaction. "Huh? You're really okay with this? You have nowhere to go without me. Don't pretend to be tough." "I'm not pretending. Just make sure to file those divorce papers properly." I signed the divorce papers handed to me and returned them to Mike. "Alright, I'll take care of it. I'll submit them tomorrow." Mike said this, but still looked puzzled. Betty stared at me with disdain and smirked. "I thought you'd resist more, given your dire situation. But you can't compete with my youth and beauty, can you?" "That's right. I'm proud to have Betty, the popular one at the club, all to myself. I always thought a woman like her would dump an older guy like me." "I was always loyal to Mike, even when I was the most popular at that club. Let's submit our marriage application as soon as the divorce papers are filed." "Club? Popular?" At my reaction, Mike quickly covered his mouth. So, he'd been going to such places while pretending to work hard. Now I remember him coming home drunk, claiming to have worked overtime. His late returns after dinner seemed suspicious. Seeing my doubtful face, Betty exclaimed, "Who cares? Anyway, Mike and I are getting together. Middle-aged women are useless." With that, Betty grabbed Mike's arm and left. Mike decided to remarry his affair partner while I suffered in the hospital. I couldn't forgive Mike. Even though I'd feel relieved after the breakup, I planned to take revenge first. After that, I quietly recovered in the hospital room and finally got permission to be discharged. With Mike remarrying and moving to Betty's apartment, I was left to live alone in our former home. When I returned home, I immediately headed to the lottery headquarters to cash in my winning ticket. It would take about a week to receive the money. During that time, I searched online for a good lawyer. I wanted to investigate Mike's past relationships with women, especially with Betty. Was their relationship really over before we got married? If it had continued, I could claim compensation. Once the lottery money was secured, I found a lawyer and asked for an investigation. It turned out that Mike had indeed continued his relationship with Betty. Betty had previously worked in a nightclub, and as Mike said, she was popular there. They had been together since then, and their relationship never really ended. So, Mike had married me while continuing his affair, treating me more like a housekeeper. This thought enraged me, but I had to stay calm, not wanting to worsen my health. I wanted to confront Mike and demand compensation, but I decided to leave everything to my lawyer and wait. Soon, Mike called me. "Hey, why did a lawyer suddenly show up demanding compensation for your alleged affair?" "Well, just do as the lawyer says. Otherwise, I'm ready to take it to court." "Shut up. Where did you get the money to hire a lawyer? Courts cost money, too. You spent a lot on hospital bills, didn't you?" Mike was oblivious to the fact that I had money, but his unnecessary comment would backfire on him. "That's true. You didn't even pay for my hospital bills while we were married. The lawyer said I could claim those expenses from you." Ugh. Mike's careless words had turned the situation in my favor. He was speechless. From the other end of the phone, "Let me talk to her." I heard a woman's voice. It must have been Betty listening in. "Hey, do you even have the right to claim compensation? You just got sick and neglected your husband. I was the one who took care of him. So if anyone deserves compensation, it's me." "That's right. Exactly." Mike, emboldened by having Betty by his side, sounded triumphant, but I remained calm and replied, "Didn't the lawyer tell you? The investigation already confirmed that Mike continued his affair with Betty even after our marriage. I hired a competent lawyer, so there's no escaping this." "Stop bluffing. You keep saying that, but you don't have the money." "That reminds me, Mike. Despite your high income, you only gave me $1.7 a month for living expenses." I struggled to manage rent, high utility bills, and groceries with that. That might also qualify for compensation, don't you think? Yes, Mike had always treated me horribly. No matter what he said now, it only dug his grave deeper. If we went to court, it was clear I had the upper hand. I had meticulously kept a household budget app, which would serve as evidence. Mike still thought I was just bluffing. A competent lawyer, huh? That's a lie. Your lawyer must be nothing special. I won't be fooled. Hearing that, I sent Mike the webpage of the law firm I found online. I hired this law firm. You have their business card, right? The webpage featured photos of the lawyer who was helping me. Mike must have been surprised to see it. This is a pretty famous law firm, isn't it? Where did you get the money to hire them? Mike's voice sounded panicked, so I decided it was time to reveal the truth. Actually, I won $500,000 in the lottery this year. Huh? My words seemed to have surprised Mike and Betty. You're lying, right? I never heard about you buying a lottery ticket. I bought it with my own money before I married you. So it's not something I needed to report to you, is it? After I answered, there was a moment of silence. Then Mike, sounding panicked, said, You're at home, right? I'm coming over right now. I wondered what Mike would do coming over now. About 20 minutes later, Mike arrived at my house alone. Surprisingly, he looked cheerful. Kate, I came to talk about the division of assets. Division of assets? Mike had come happily, so I wondered what he was thinking. I was dumbfounded by his ridiculous claim. The lottery ticket was bought before marriage, but you cashed it in after we were married, right? Doesn't that mean I'm entitled to half as shared marital property? Unfortunately, that won't work. I cashed it in after our divorce was finalized. And besides, the divorce was due to your infidelity. What? Don't say that! We were once husband and wife, so give me at least a quarter. Mike pleaded desperately. I sharply rebuked him. No way! There's no division of assets. I need to get compensation from you. About that. Mike was again trying to come up with something that suited him. You know I was deceived by that woman. She only approached me for my money. She worked in a nightclub, so she must have had other men, more than just me. So what are you trying to say? Meaning, I'm a victim here, not really cheating. Of course I'll break up with her and never cheat again. So, can't we start over? I was amazed at his audacity. Do you really think that excuse will work? You definitely cheated. Look, I have plenty of evidence. I said this and laid out the photos my lawyer had collected of Mike's infidelity. The photos showed Mike with his arm around Betty, entering and exiting a hotel, and intimate scenes in a park. All were clear evidence of his infidelity. Damn, you gathered these? Mike picked up the photos, frustrated. Then, as if to add insult to injury, Betty appeared. Apparently, she had followed Mike and was hiding nearby. Hey, Mike! Who said I deceived you? You were the one crying and begging me. Betty, you heard that? It seemed like the end for Mike. Betty, having heard all of Mike's selfish reasoning, was furious. Don't look down on me because I worked in a nightclub. I've always loved Mike, even after we broke up. What will you do about these feelings? I'm sorry. Mike was now dwarfed by two angry women. I was so happy when you came back to me. You trampled on my feelings, so I'll ask for compensation too. Hey, why should I pay compensation to a mistress? A mistress? We were legally married, even if it was for less than a month. Well, it started as an affair. Seeing Mike's desperate face, I almost laughed. Mike, women's hearts aren't so easily swayed. Mike looked utterly disheartened by my words. It seemed like things were settling down, so I decided to call one more person who had been listening in. You can come out now. What? There's someone else here? At my call, a person from the next room entered. Hello? I've heard everything. It's that lawyer from before. Yes, this lawyer had told me to contact him anytime something happened. So when Mike said he was coming over, I immediately contacted him. The lawyer entered my house quietly through the back door and had been waiting in the next room. Mike, as Kate just told you, you have no right to any division of assets. Regarding the compensation, Betty's case will also be added, so we'll reconsider that. Upon hearing this from the lawyer, Mike was stunned into a daze. With this, everything was resolved, and I felt relieved. Afterward, I received compensation from Mike and settled the property division based on half of Mike's income during our marriage. Mike ended up divorcing Betty and now lives alone. However, his company, a strict major corporation, became aware of his infidelity and successive divorces, leading to his dismissal. It seems he had been under scrutiny by his superiors for his flashy relationships with women. This latest divorce scandal quickly leaked out. I haven't seen Mike since then, but someone informed me about his situation. It was none other than Betty, his affair partner. Betty seemed remorseful for what she had done to me and came to my house to apologize. I'm sorry. I'll work and pay the compensation for the affair, little by little. Please wait for me. Betty apologized while saying this. However, I refused the compensation from Betty. I heard she hadn't found steady employment since leaving the nightclub. Initially, she managed with her savings, but her spending habits from her nightclub days lingered, and now her savings were gone. So, she had clung to Mike, hoping to somehow get back together with him. But I know it sounds like an excuse, but I really did love Mike. Betty's eyes were sincere when she said she had always loved Mike. That's why I decided to let things go smoothly with Betty. On the other hand, Mike lost his job and, burdened with compensation to me and Betty, was in a financial crisis. He was even evicted from his apartment for failing to pay rent. Then he came to me, looking desperate. Kate, I was really wrong. Please forgive me just this once. I'll listen to anything you say from now on. Just let me stay here. I won't ask for money or anything. Mike begged pitifully, so I answered, Fine, you can stay in this house as long as you want. Really? Oh, thank you. I let Mike into the house, but that night, while he was sleeping, I packed my belongings. I had been looking for a new place and had just finalized the arrangements. By dawn, when Mike woke up, the moving truck was already there. Hey, what's going on? Why are you packing up? Where are you going? Oh, I'm moving out today. You know this house is a rental, right? You'll have to pay the rent yourself from now on. It's $1,000 a month. What? I can't pay that right now. You tricked me. I didn't trick you. I just said you could stay here. Good luck with the rent. Bye. I left the house saying this. Since then, I've canceled my mobile phone and made it impossible for Mike to contact me. Of course, I didn't give him my new address. Later, I ran into the owner of the house, where Mike and I lived. Apparently, Mike couldn't pay the rent and had to leave. No one knows where he went. As for me, I bought a luxurious high-rise apartment with the lottery winnings. The view of the cityscape from the window is simply stunning. I fully recovered from the stress after separating from Mike. The apartment has a fitness room on the first floor, so I exercise daily. I also adopted a Pomeranian, Mocha, who has become my dear family. But I can't just live off the lottery winnings. I enjoy working, so I decided to get rehired at the company where I worked before marriage. Coincidentally, I saw a job posting the day I moved in. They had trouble finding good staff after I left. So, when I asked to be rehired, my boss was delighted. Now, I'm enjoying an ideal lifestyle, comfortable in my new home, and familiar work environment. Though I wasn't blessed with a happy marriage, I'm looking forward to living life my way. That's the greatest happiness for me now.